Hi, my name's Tom Ford. I'm the City of Petaluma's project manager for the Petaluma SMART Station specific plan. We've waited a little while to see if more people would show up, and we have a few people now, so I'm going to get started. What we want to do today is just give you a little bit of an overview of where we're coming from. We assume everyone who's at this meeting has probably already received or seen the RFP. So we'll try to supplement that information and then at the end take any questions you have. So first I'll give you a little overview of the specific plan and the process, and we'll go over the RFP schedule. We've received one question to date, so I'm just going to give that question and answer. And then, as I said earlier, we'll pause and see if any of you have questions that you'd like to put to us. There's a few different Petaluma staff planners online, including a person heavily connected with the ongoing general plan update process. So as many of you probably know, Petaluma is located along Highway 101 north of San Francisco, specifically in Sonoma County between Novato and Cotati. The specific plan that we're looking at today and over the next couple of years is for a PDA at the North Petaluma Station. And Petaluma, as you can see in this map, actually has two smart stations. Each of them have been identified as a priority development area by MTC. The issue that's before us today is just the one that's on the north side of this diagram here. So we'll be dealing with that. For those of you who haven't been to Petaluma, which I just included about 3 or 4 photos here in the next couple slides, just to give an sort of a glimpse of sort of what it is. It has a rich architectural heritage, generally speaking to its riverfront and industrial and agricultural past, but it's intermixed with more recent development that, as you can see on the right, tries to take in something of that industrial or agricultural vernacular in the expression of its materials and its form. It's got a lot of, especially downtown, it has a lot of nice walkable streets, and throughout the city, as you can see on the right, there's a really rich interplay between existing
Yeah,
new
it's for sure.
contemporary uses. Go ahead and mute that person, please. Um, Contemporary uses juxtaposed against the architectural past. So let me talk just a little bit about the general plan update. This was mentioned quite prominently in the RFP. If you go to the page where you can see the address there at the lower left, there's a whole series of documents that are available that have been developed as part of the background and ongoing process to develop the general plan. Those materials are being made available. Well, they're available anyway. They're available on the internet for the general plan process, but you should make use of them in the development of your proposal. And certainly you should assume that the selected consultant will want to make use of these to both streamline their schedule, streamline their project, and also benefit in the existing conditions task from a lot of material that's been developed and generated to this date. The points that we make in the RFP are right here. Um, they're not they're not just these 5 bullet points. There's a lot of material, as you saw on the slide before, but in specific, the existing conditions report is important. Each of the general plan elements has a policy framework. Recently, sometime within the last year, the council approved the climate action plan. There's of course the 6 cycle housing element, and then there's been a lot of work on flooding and mapping the impacts of sea level rise. As you probably noticed, the plan area straddles the Petaluma River. There is the plan area in green right there, and as you can see, as we note in the RFP, Petalumans generally think of their town, their city, as 4 quadrants divided by in the north-south direction by Washington Street and D Street. and in the well, also the north-south, it would be Highway 101 or the river. So this specific plan area takes up over 1,100 acres in sort of that northwest quadrant, um, centered on the recently opened Petaluma North Station, but extending a pretty far southeast towards Washington and ending at Washington Street, almost adjacent across Highway 101 from the downtown. For those of you who haven't been to the station area, there's some recent development, but there's a lot of also vacant land. I'm going to talk in a little bit about some of the land that's within the city limits. Some of it's not in the city limits, and some of it's not even presently within the urban growth boundary. And we'll talk about that a little bit. The picture at the top left is where the railroad tracks actually cross Corona Road. So you'll see that that's a condition that exists right now. The other two photos, the photo in the middle is the intersection of Corona and McDowell. McDowell's a pretty significant um, major street that runs north-south or northwest to southeast through the plan area. And if you can see the little complete streets improvements that have recently been done there on the right side, that's for not the entire length of McDowell in our plan area, but about 1 or 2 years ago, the Public Works Department completed that complete streets project, and some of those improvements are now up and running in the plan area. Key considerations for developing your scope of work. You'll notice in the RFP we carried over a draft or a suggested scope of work that was in our grant from MTC. It was included as in the grant materials that when they made their grant to the city. And for us at the city, we really want to focus on engagement. Should you stray from that suggested framework that we put in the RFP, it's really important to make sure that you really that your scope of work is in contact with these 5 bullet points. And if you really stray from it, you should probably explain how it is that you're still meeting these points. Engagement is number 1. That's really important for the community. They want to be part of this planning process. So we'll want to see your team's ideas about how you plan to engage the community and create a vision, alternatives, neighborhood or district delineations, and then a specific plan that answers that community. We're really looking to find ways to increase land use and housing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit when I talk about the TOC policy from MTC. The environment and housing are really important. There's a fair amount of Petaluma's disadvantaged population that actually lives in this large plan area, and they're subject to impacts from flooding associated with the river and sea level rise associated with the river. Circulation is also an important key point. This is a great new opportunity that just opened literally 2 or 3 months ago, the Petaluma North Station. And there's going to be opportunities to connect to that station, both by foot, by bike, and by other regional transportation agencies. Environmental planning is really important, not just to the community, but also to this plan. Even though the general plan update is in process, that EIR will be its own animal. And this specific plan, particularly because it's looking at land outside the city limits and outside the urban growth boundary, it'll need to have its own EIR. So let me talk just a little bit about the urban growth boundary. You can see here, let me just turn on my little pen. Here's the urban growth boundary right now. And so this land right here is in Sonoma County. This land right here is in the plan area. It's in Sonoma County, but it's also within the urban growth boundary. So this past November, by a fairly overwhelming majority, I think it was 69% or something, the urban growth boundary, the voters voted to approve it for continued use. with the stipulation that it could be changed without a voter initiative and by the council, specifically to approximately where you see these green lines. So the initiative that passed in November authorized, under the right conditions, the council, without going back to the voters, to approve an extension of the urban growth boundary, which would probably lead to annexation too. And so therefore, all of these lands in Sonoma County are part of our planning process. And we've already in contact with Permit Sonoma to make sure that we have someone from their team intimately involved in the development of this plan. The scope of work framework should also make sure that it addresses ways to increase the housing supply, reducing VMT. These are all key components of that draft scope of work. As I mentioned, with regard to public realm standards, some of McDowell was just recently updated with a complete streets project. So some of that has been taken care of, but some of it may need to be adjusted or examined for improvement, or the others, especially on other streets such as Corona. There'll need to be some public realm plans. Circulation is really important, station access, all of those things, and supporting regional goals. These 5 bullets are actually from the scope of work as well. But in supporting regional goals and policies, and I'm almost done, I just want to talk a little bit about the MTC TOC policy. For those of you that haven't worked with it, basically the area within the half-mile radius, and you can see the dotted half-mile radius, centered on the intersection of the SMART corridor with Corona Road. The plan will need to ensure that residential and office densities within that half-mile radius meet certain minimums for density and for FAR with regard to office. So it's a long process. It's not long, but it's complicated and requires really some thinking about how to get an aggregate density that matches MTC's requirements, which for this particular station is a minimum of 25 dwelling units per acre. And I believe, we'll have to verify this, but I believe that office FAR for new development needs to be 1.0. So one other thing, and Heather, my colleague Heather, will put this link in the chat so you don't have to try to write it down. But there is a project website, and so if you go to it, we'll be making updates there. And if you scroll down past the schedule, you'll see there's a place where we're starting to accumulate documents. So within a day or two, we hope to have the video recording of this meeting right now available here. Any questions and answers that we take from you today would be put up here. And then also we're taking questions. You see the pre-submittal meeting and then proposal due to, so it's not in here, but this Friday, if you have other questions, you can submit them in writing to North Station SP at cityofpetaluma.org. And by the following Friday, we will provide answers and make those questions and answers available right here in the project documents, available to anyone that wants to look. So here is the master schedule. There we are today, April 8th at 10 a.m. The proposal is not due till the 30th at 5. But as I said, there is that Q&A in between there. Questions due this Friday and answers posted no later than next Friday. To date, we already have received one question. Here it is. And this will be included in today's Q&A. Someone had asked about how we distributed, what list we use to distribute the RFP. And we basically received from MTC their bench, if you will. And we used the categories comprehensive planning and a second category, engagement and outreach. And then also we looked at, we added any of the DBE certified firms within district that have an office within District 4, Caltrans District 4. They were provided with an RFP. And then, of course, it's also at the project website. So next steps, and then I'll be happy to take questions. Submit any questions, additional questions that aren't answered or that you think of in the meantime by this Friday. We'll post them the following Friday. Proposals are due Wednesday, April 30th. And then we hope to do shortlist the proposals and develop a list of interviews for firms to interview the first week of June. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. And there's a couple or three people here from the city with me, and including a general plan person. And we can see if we can answer your questions.
Hi, Tom. Could I go? It's not recognizing my hand gesture, though.
Oh, sure.
I have three questions for you. The first being the project schedule. Could you tell us what is your anticipation, not for the selection or the RFP, but the actual project as to what you anticipate, how long this will take, and by what time do you, or, what month and year do you anticipate it being completed? And then I'll ask the other two questions after you answer this one. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for not making me remember three questions. If you'll see on the first page of the RFP, we're anticipating this initial contract with the selected consultant to go, we put through July 2027. That's 2 years from
Got
a
it.
couple months from now. But we also anticipate that, after we go through the selection process, after we negotiate with the consultant, go to council, that this project probably won't begin until around August 1st. And so we anticipate it going perhaps 2 years. However, as we review proposals, we'll be really eager to see if consultants can come up with a way of shortening that time, particularly since there is so much existing conditions material already available. What's your second question? And why don't you give me your name? Because I don't see it either.
Oh, Rajiv Bhatia from Diden Bhatia.
Oh, hi, Rajiv.
Hi. The second question I have is that the planning area extends quite a bit, as you mentioned, about a couple of miles all the way down to Washington Street. That's a little unusual. Is there a reason as to why, is there something the general plan is not covering outside of this half a mile area, along McDowell, and that entire corridor all the way to Washington Street that you want the specific plan to get into?
Right. So, and we note this in the RFP, the specific plan boundaries are they coexist. There's a better word for it, but they're the same exact boundaries as MTC's identified PDA. So this is just one of many PDA grants that MTC has out there. And so our specific plan area is adhering to the boundaries of PDA.
Oh, so you do anticipate, for example, along McDowell Street and so on, the specific plan to start digging into the land uses there, or would you
Correct.
find the general plan for that? Yeah.
And
No,
I
the
would
general,
add,
oh yeah,
hi, I'm Heather Gerwitz, and I work with the general plan update team. So the city is in the general plan update. We are looking at redesignations that are along North McDowell, that are south of the Corona Road area and outside that half-mile circle. So I would, and even though that whole area is covered in the PDA, I would anticipate the focus of the work that we're going to be doing is in that half-mile radius, because that we've really kept outside of the general plan because we've known we're going to be doing it separately through this project.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification, and I'll come to my third question, and I'll relinquish the floor here. You did a very good job of outlining a very detailed and comprehensive scope of work in the RFP. So my question to you is that if we make any changes or suggestions to that, in what format do you want to see that in? Do you want us to, so that it's convenient for you to review, do you want us to rewrite the entire scope of work? Do you want us to use track changes and highlight those changes for you? What would be, the most efficient thing for us to do and for you to review?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I hadn't thought of track changes, but I don't think we want to go there. As I said earlier in the presentation, we were just trying to adhere to the stipulations in our grant. I don't think you necessarily need to do that. I would prefer just seeing what you believe the best scope of work is. And then, as we mentioned in the RFP, we want to see what your project understanding is and your approach. That's a place where you could cover something like that. I tried to point out some of the really important parts of the scope that have to come across, whether it's the scope we gave you and you copy paste it, or you develop it your own. But that includes dealing with flooding, engaging the community, having an engagement plan that really involves community members. And so I don't know if that's enough of an answer, but I don't think you should feel like you have to, adhere to that word for word, but we certainly want to know if you stray from it, why you think that's important.
Okay, thank you for that.
Hey, Tom. Matt Tacker, WRT. Good
Hey,
to
Matt.
see you. I missed the first few minutes. Could you describe what your relationship to this process is? You're on contract with the city,
Yeah,
and what will your role be in the selection process?
right. I'm the city's project manager. So yes, I do have a contract with the city to be the project manager, not just now to get a consultant on board, but over the next year and a half to 2 years to get the plan adopted and the CEQA document certified.
Uh-huh. And who else do you expect to be part of the selection process, such as an interview?
We're still in the process of getting those people, but we'll
Mhm.
probably have a couple of people from the planning department, including the director, and
Mhm.
probably someone. Oh, we have someone from Public Works and then someone from Economic Development. It's
Mhm.
not firmed up yet, but that's probably who's going to make up the committee of at least
Right.
3 people.
Okay. And you did a nice job of describing the existing conditions, which is both a combination of established areas as well as and fairly recently developed, looks like, and greenfield. And you mentioned the flooding and obviously housing and intensity near transit's a big driver. Are there any other high-level issues that are major drivers for this project?
Yeah, I would say arriving at the right densities for the half-mile radius within the TOC area. Also, I don't think I mentioned it in this actual presentation, but it is mentioned in the RFP. There's a fair amount of existing established mobile home communities,
Mhm.
both within the half-mile radius and outside the half-mile radius, both along McDowell and also closer to the river. So I think those are all really critical pieces of this. And then I don't know what the answer is to this yet, but there's this whole issue of almost a quarter of the TOC circle, if you notice, is in Sonoma County. It's unincorporated Sonoma County, and a large amount of it is outside the urban growth boundary. So how that plays into the planning process, I think is going to be really kind of dynamic and exciting, but it is something to really be aware of.
Interesting. So it has issues that
And
would
let me
surround the annexation. Yeah.
Right. And let me point out, I just gave a really, really broad overview of the urban growth boundary issue,
Hmm.
but it's explained in quite a bit better detail in the RFP and more thorough details.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I just want to add, I know that Tom already highlighted it, but it's difficult to express how engaged the Petaluma community is. They have a very high level of engagement and they expect extensive outreach. So I would ensure that you're prepared for that in your proposals.
Okay.
And I
Thank you.
also want to apologize. I do not know why we're not seeing the chat feature to provide those links.
Oh,
Yeah, so Tom, I don't know if you're able to chat, but I am not able to for some reason. So
oh, I can chat. No, I don't know if
okay.
I can Zoom chat.
Yeah, I know. I can't. I'm not seeing it for some reason. It's just not there. So I have Yuri trying to
Let
help me
me
figure out where it is.
let me share my screen again. I'll go back to that slide and I'll just park on it for a while. And if people want to
Great.
uh
And then I have one more question.
sure, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, and that is the degree to which the draft EIR or I don't know, EIR for that point matter for the general plan update will have been completed. Where is that environmental analysis at? More specifically, can this project expect to tier off of the general plan EIR?
I'll let Heather answer like where it is right now, but I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure you're not going to be able to tier off that, partly because we're on a different timeline. And also the general plan EIR did not take into account potential movement of the urban growth boundary. So that's a
Mhm.
big deal, and
Yeah.
that's going to have to be looked at. I've parked on the screen that has our the project website. Sorry that it's so long.
Can you just share it though?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And I'll go ahead and just as to where we're at with the general plan is we are refining the land use alternatives at this moment and in the process of preparing the draft of the general plan. And so we're hoping in the coming months to release the NOP for the EIR. As Tom noted, because there'll be an annexation involved in the property that is adjacent to the SMART station that's closest, where we're expecting to have a very high density. That would be outside the scope of the current general plan because we're only working within the existing urban growth boundary. But also, it's probable that because what we're looking at in the general plan for increases in density and what the proposed development would be, this would be in addition to that because we're not doing any of that through general plan. So the general plan EIR would unlikely be a good source for an addendum. A supplement is potentially feasible, but it's hard to know what the timeline will be for that. And we are we anticipate it'll likely be its own EIR. However, we're open to other proposals if you have different ideas. So, but I would anticipate it's likely to be its own EIR.
Great. Thank you so much.
And
So
I
I
see
can
there's
see,
another hand raised.
yeah, there's hand raised. I see Natali. Would you like to go next?
Hey, thanks, Tom. This is Mithali. I had a couple of questions. One of them, since you were talking about the mobile home communities in the area, has there been any recent outreach to them, like as part of any other process or just in general, to sort of get a sense of what their views are about any potential land use changes to that area? So can you just talk a bit more about what has the relationship been with the mobile home communities and how do you envision that impacting this specific plan work?
I would.
Well,
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. So Petaluma has a strong commitment to protecting our mobile home park communities. They provide essential low-income housing, and the residents who are there have been very active and vocal about wanting to maintain their ability to stay in their homes. So I would assume that any changes would not change any land use designations for those parks, and that it would be, any work would be consistent with our city's policy to protect those housing areas.
And let me just add, any communication that anybody in the plan area has had with regard to this process has been very little. So any conversations or thoughts that they've had have been in the context of the general plan update and not in this process, which will allow the consultant with the help of city staff to initiate once the project gets underway.
Understood. Yeah, that's very helpful, Tom. I had one more question, and that's dealing with the existing PDs in the area. Specifically, I'm talking about within the half-mile radius around the SMART station. So is there any appetite to actually change the designation, the land use designations for the PDs? Generally, that's a very difficult topic to get into. So I just wanted to get a sense of what is the city's attitude towards exploring that or just staying away from it.
I think you should, if you feel it's important to explore, I don't want to put any, or we don't want to put any limits on what you think is the right move here. I think what Heather said specifically about those particular residential communities, they're probably not going anywhere, and we wouldn't want to investigate land use change there. But I think there's going to be other places where we'll certainly want to hear what the consultant team thinks, particularly since the scope that we've outlined has an alternatives process. So it doesn't, the first idea that comes forward doesn't necessarily need to be the be all and end all, but it could be an alternative that at least gets explored at that preliminary level of engagement or study.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm going in order, but let me go to Poonam next.
Hi, Tom. Poonam from WRT. I had a question about, one of the requirement in the the RFP mentions creating a detailed public realm plan and standards, specifically for the arterials that you have identified. And, just wondering if you can share a little bit more about what level of detail is expected.
I think they would not be construction drawings. They would be a conceptual plan that gives you enough information that you can get a high level cost estimate from them, so that we understand what the vision is and how much it could potentially at a conceptual level cost to construct that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Troy, how about you next?
Hi, thanks, Tom. Troy Reinalter with Good City Company. I guess my question is, you touched on this earlier, but should we be proposing services or documentation related to annexation as part of our scope? I didn't see that really mentioned in the RFP, but would we be expected to do, LAFCO coordination to kind of present to council for the council decision related to annexation as part of this process? Any thoughts on that?
No, we don't presently see the annexation process as part of this. We think what would happen is, if it goes forward and it's the alternative that's arrived at envisions needing or including that unincorporated land in the urban growth boundary, this specific plan would make that change. If the council doesn't necessarily have to change the urban growth boundary, but we would develop the plan in a way that the council would do that. And we envision this process as just getting to that point. The annexation part would happen later. With that said, Permit Sonoma, which controls unincorporated Sonoma County land, and the LAFCO representative are all engaged in this. They have the RFP. They know that we're getting started, and they're going to hopefully be part of this process and help us with that.
Thanks.
Heidi.
Good morning. Heidi Sokolowski with Urban Field. Tom, I have a quick question about the engagement part. How much of a role will the city play? I know that you've done a lot of engagement already with the general plan. Is the city very active? I mean, in other words, they are going to lead, let's say, a task force being involved with all the engagement, or do you want to rely mostly on the team for that?
We would like to rely on the team for that. We will be available to facilitate like meeting places, making sure that there's a place to meet, making sure if we have contact information that we can provide that. But I think what we want to see in your proposal is the first stab at an engagement plan. And then if you'll notice task, I think it's 1.5 or 1.6, it goes on for over a page, and it talks about one of your tasks after you get hired would be to develop in greater detail and in coordination with city staff an engagement plan. So that'll get covered there. But you should feel like, developing the materials, presenting the ideas, presenting the concept is all in the realm of what we expect the consultant to do.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm sorry, I don't see everybody's picture here, so I may be missing a hand. Has everybody had a chance to write down this long HTTP address? Keep in mind, that's just one. The other one that's really important is the general plan update, planpetaluma.org. That's also in the RFP. We didn't have the project website up and running before we published the RFP, so it's not in there. Is that it? Is there anybody from the Petaluma team that wants to add anything that they thought of that might have been missed, or I might have missed in the Q&A? Okay. Well, again, let me just go back to that slide. So again, we've been recording your questions, not only a video recording of this meeting, but somebody's actually been writing them down old school. And we'll develop that into a list of questions. Even though we answered them verbally, we'll give you more succinct answers in writing. And we'll get that posted as soon as we're able. We'll get the video up, hopefully, as a link. And then any additional questions you have, if you want to get them in writing to North Station SP at cityofpetaluma.org by the end of the day this Friday. We no later than the following Friday will have a complete Q&A. We'll redact people's names if that makes people feel more comfortable. But we'll just put the question there, put the answer, and post that on the project website. So we're not expecting to send out a reminder to you folks that, hey, we answered 18 questions. Just make a point of checking back at the project website. And if there's a technical issue, please let us know. Reach out to North Station SP at cityofpetaluma.org.
And Tom, she put her hand down, but it looked like Mitali had another question.
Oh.
Yeah, hi. I didn't mean to sort of interrupt since you seem to be wrapping up, but if there's time, it's slightly a broad question, but you know that the general plan update is in progress, as you mentioned. So just broadly, what lessons from the GPU process do you hope to apply for this specific plan project? Like what has worked well, what has not worked well? Can you give any feedback on that?
I can't because I haven't really been intimately involved with that. I do know that some of the more senior people in the planning department want to make sure that when we get to like going to the planning commission or going to some other commission or going to the city council, that the consultant is able to prepare the staff report. Sometimes that kind of fell through the cracks, apparently, with the general plan update process. And the council really wants to be informed. The planning commission wants to be informed. Everybody wants to be informed. So we just have to make sure that each of those touch points in your scope of your proposed scope of work hits on an adequate amount of detail by the consultant to provide the ideas and the gist of what you're presenting. I don't know, Heather, do you have any other, you've been more intimately involved than with the GPU?
Yeah, no, I think you pretty much touched on it. I would just make sure that it's you know, I would anticipate that we'll want when it, you know, whoever the successful bidder is, that it would be a very detailed scope of work with as noted, very clear about you know, whether or not you're planning to prepare staff reports or what level of community outreach activities that, you know, even though that's going to be in that specific plan, I think we'll want to make sure that it's very clear, all of that down to those details. So
That helps a lot. Thank you, Heather, and thanks, Tom.
Sure, thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay, well, I really appreciate, everybody at the City of Petaluma appreciates that you guys took the time to dial in and take part. It's good to see some old faces from my career, and looking forward to reading proposals that get submitted. Thank you. Take care.